I'm like, F you, old man.
That's awesome.
Anyway, it was fun.
Yeah. When you first got into cars, like what were the cars were you always into American cars, or were you into a lot of foreign cars?
You know, I mean, back when, you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, I mean, it was all muscle cars. So, you know, you see the guy with the Chevelle or the Camaro, the 70 and a half, Z28.
How old are you?
I'm 60.
Okay, so you're a little older than me. I'm 65.
Yeah, so I just grew up around muscle cars, and then fast forward, you know, went to college for a few years, dropped out, moved from Kansas City to Texas, and back then, like in the 80s, the German cars, they had these rally cars over in Europe, and there was the Group B rally cars, and they call them the Killer Bees because they got so fast back like in the mid to late 80s that the crowds would like bunch up in the road waiting for these, you know, rally cars blasting by at 120 or whatever. And they knew where the rally cars were because the helicopters were chasing them, you know, kind of spotting for them, or the TV camera. And then one time the cars got so fast that they would like they got ahead of the helicopters, and these Group B rally cars like landed on people and killed a bunch of people. So they call them the Killer Bee. So I was really kind of enamored with like the Audi Quattro. They went to Pikes Peak and they raced at Pikes Peak. And that's really kind of what got so I kind of, you know, shifted gears from American muscle to now kind of this higher tech German all-wheel drive, turbocharged stuff. And then kind of I started a small environmental cleanup, like an asbestos abatement business back in the late 80s, and made a little bit of money. Wasn't dating my wife, wasn't married yet. And so I read in Motor Trend magazine about this guy named C. Van Toon. He was actually the editor at Motor Trend back in the mid to late 90s. And he had bought an Eagle Talon, this is like 1990, put a roll cage in it, and he goes and enters the Pikes Peak Hill Climb in Colorado Springs. And I read that, and I'm like, oh man, my name's not Andretti or Unser. I can't just show up to Indy, but maybe I could do that. And so made a little bit of money in my asbestos business. I was reading the car magazines, and I'm like, I'm the kind of guy, whether it's then or now, I don't really want to do what everybody else has done. I'm a contrarian by nature, and you know, if everybody else is racing Porsches or whatever. So I'm trying to find something that I can afford, but that's high tech that I can modify to race at Pikes Peak. And I read about a car that came out that year. It was the Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4. So it was all-wheel drive, twin turbo V6.
Let me see what that looks like.
Four-wheel stir, yeah. And
I had a Mitsubishi Starion.
Yeah, those are cool. Those are coming back. That's kind of rad woodish.
What that car was? Is it Mitsubishi
3000? Yeah, just type in Hennessy 3000 GT, and you'll probably see something
now that I'm
pop
thinking
up.
about it, I had the Dodge version of it. I
Yeah,
had the Conquest.
yeah, the Stealth. Oh, the Conquest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you had one of those. Those things were sick.
Yeah, those were cool.
I loved those things when I first
saw
saw
them. So I took it and raced it at Pikes Peak, and didn't win anything, but
those things were the shit when they came out.
Drove it to Pikes Peak, drove it home. I did a couple races. If you type in, yeah.
You know what's crazy? Does Mitsubishi?
Like, there you go. That Motor Trend article. There's Bonneville.
Mitsubishi doesn't make anything like that now, right?
You know,
they don't make
Mitsubishi. I mean, a good friend of mine, Joe Jacuzzi, is with GM now. Yeah, there were some really great folks at Mitsubishi, and maybe they've just kind of gone on to other things. But yeah, the VR200. Wow. So that car. So I learned the first rule in car racing. Well, the first rule, if you want to make a small fortune in the car racing business, you start with a larger fortune. and so I'm going and I'm doing these races, and I'm going to Pikes Peak, and I do these open road races in Nevada where you go out on night. They still have it called the Silver State Classic. They take Highway 318, it's just south of Ely, so about 4 hours north of Vegas, and they shut the whole highway down, and they let these cars go out on a Sunday morning and go out and haul ass. And so the first time I did it, my average speed for 90 miles was 164 miles an hour. I did 90 miles in 34 minutes in that car.
Jesus Christ.
And, you know, the first time I did it, didn't even have a roll cage, which is pretty stupid. But after I did all this stuff, so I'm engaged, planning a honeymoon. We bought a house. I like to say we bought furniture, but my wife corrects me on that. We just bought, but you know, we inherited furniture from her family, or I think all I brought to the marriage was a mattress and a box spring and a desk maybe and a Mac. Anyway, so I did all that. I'm doing all these races. Come home from the honeymoon, and I look at the bank balance. I'm like, man, I used to have some money in the bank before I got engaged and bought a race car and raced all over the place. And I thought, you know, I really like doing this car thing. Maybe other people would pay me to modify their cars, like Carroll Shelby, like Alois Roof with Porsches, Reeves Callaway. And so, October of 1991, we opened up Hennessy Motorsports, and I hired a mechanic and got a toolbox, and off we went. And that kind of led into the JDM market. So